Some people say I can be pretty harsh to elves, but I think my comments have always been pretty fair and quite subtle, honestly. Elves, blech, a truly detestable sight. The most vile creature in all of the lands. It's the elves. Many elves will be harmed in the making of this video. It's gonna be great. Let's kill some elves! So today I'll prove I'm not a total elf hater by playing the coolest elf of the bunch, Macaulay Culkin. Because of course he comes with the big old advantages to dragons, and that's all we're gonna use today. So come with me now as we play the Knights of Culkindor and try to conquer the world with only dragons. So this is a Macaulay campaign. We're going to be going on very hard with a little bit of a stat boost. And beginning here in the Southern Darklands, we must of course get rid of everything that is not a dragon. So that leaves us with just a dragon. But we start with a mage hero who does actually get a dragon mount, so we will allow her into the army. And I figure because I have a dragon, maybe I can win my starting battle, even though there is some shooty stuff. That can be dangerous for our dragon, but as long as we keep it tied up, it'll be fine, which is what I managed to do. Other than that, I just keep moving and cycle charging, and most importantly, try to make the best use of breath attacks by getting all the enemy units to gather around my lord and hero, and then hitting them with that breath attack so they're all nice and tightly packed and easily hit by it. It took a fair bit of micro, but we got it done. This allowed me to push on the first settlement. Although we are quite beaten up, we've got a similar situation here, but no missiles this time, so a little less dangerous for us, but we got the job done in the same way, just lining up those breath attacks nice, cycle charging and trying to terror out stuff with the dragon. So we're able to progress with this campaign straight away without having to turtle up in our first settlement like I normally have to in these campaigns. As I'm recovering, a little dwarf army seems to be forming, so I go to take care of that before it gets too big. Same ordeal again, same tactics again, although in this one we seem to get the pervy dwarf lord who looks like a bit of a sex offender as he chases my mage here. Come here, you. Luckily, she escapes his grubby dwarf sausage fingers, and this eventually clears the way for us to go and take the final settlement in this province, with a battle I have to fight, but you can imagine how that went at this point. Although it was a little tougher with the missile units, I nearly lost my dragon, but we kept him alive. Now with this province complete and the dwarves destroyed, we can now focus on trying to get our settlement to tier 4, because that's where we can get the dragons. As I'm chilling out growing my province though, we get declared war on by that dirty smelly rat Tretch. But we also get our first dragon encounter where we can potentially get ourselves a new powerful dragon. But of course I have no army to do that with yet, so I'm going to have to take something else. I'm going to go for the influence and use it to get myself a decent second lord, another mage, because they will eventually get that dragon mount. So it's dragon, part of the dragon army, right? It's fine. Now on occasion a Tretch army would poke its head around and I'd be kinda ready. I put my second lord in ambush just in case, and eventually I managed to get the little bastard in one of my ambushes, but I didn't like my chances as I didn't think I'd have any way to protect my missiles, and I had a garrison building in the works, so I just waited for that to be built, and then he eventually came and attacked me, but now we had a much bigger force and the means to protect our missiles. We also got pretty lucky on the map as we had a nice little slope we could put a shield wall on and get all the missiles behind firing away. I also had a unit of cav I could disrupt their missiles with. So they came at us, but our shieldy boys were able to hold well. Elven spears, of course, pretty good at staying alive, we'll give them that, which also helped set up some nice breath attacks. And so with that and a hell of a lot of missiles, we're able to get rid of this dirty rat army and just wait for that tier 4 building so we can recruit dragons. But, oh scheisse! My lord has been attacked by herself. She's got caught in an ambush. There's no way she could survive. Sadly, she's done for. But luckily, not all rats are against us, as Queek comes to us and offers not to smash our face in if we just give him a little bit of money, which is obviously a no-brainer. I start to think about the surrounding factions, one of the most dangerous being the Legion of Asgore, who I decide to actually increase my relations with using some of my influence as we're already improving, so this will help keep them off our back for a while at least. Now here at turn 37, we've reached tier 4 settlement and we can finally construct our dragony building. So a few turns on, the time has finally come. We can recruit some dragons. I can only get 2 at a time, but that's just enough to get 2 before we get attacked by Tretch again. This time he's come up with a much tougher army, got a whole bunch of rat ogres and rattling guns, but we got a tougher army too. Specifically with our 3 dragons, like some kind of budget Targaryen. All the reinforcements come in through a narrow passage, which seems like a bit of a curse at first, but it actually turns out to be kind of a blessing as we can use it to defend as a nice little choke point. I can then use all my missiles sitting behind the spears to blast down all the rat ogres as they tower above the spears and have the dragons disrupt the rattling guns, as well as of course using some of their many breath attacks that they have available between 3 dragons. And needless to say, this enemy army did not last too long. With that out of the way, I could now sit back and recruit dragons like there's no tomorrow. But I noticed that the Chaos Dwarfs around me were getting pretty big and were kind of starting to surround me, but they shared borders with Clan Moors. Now I decided to check if they were at war with Clan Moors, which they weren't, so of course I tried to get them to be, in the hope that Clan Moors might weaken them a bit so I can attack them when my dragon army is built and I am ready. And my army was coming along nicely. I got about 10 dragons before I started to run out of income to spend on it. Imrik, of course, getting the big reduction to the upkeep of dragons. But over the turn, Drazoth came to me and said... What did he say? He just said, give us some money or we'll beat you up. Okay, that's fine. I'll do that for now while I keep building my dragons. I'm not ready to take on you yet. About this time, another dragon encounter came along, and I thought I'm finally able to actually challenge this now, and it's for Shakalot the Calamity, the big old black dragon, bastard dragon man. So let's do it. We've got to take on a vampire army with lots of zombies, so this should be quite easy. This was my first battle using a large dragon army, and it's always quite a sight to behold to see like 10 dragons descending on the enemy army, even if it is just a crumper bunch of zombies. Now, of course, there wasn't much in this army that could really stand up to us. They had Cairn Race, they had some ghouls, but a couple of breath attacks, fire attacks, that was the end of all of that. Until the big dragon man himself showed up, Shakalot, who we had no choice but to pretty much just gank with dragons. Although he was nearly saved when his reinforcements arrived. There was actually a few slightly tougher bits, but nothing a bunch of dragons couldn't handle. With Shakalot nearly dead, I decided to try and make a bit of a cinematic finish, having Imrik solo take him down to finish him off. He's got half his health, he'll be fine, he's the anti-large boy, the Dragon King. Nah, fucked it, mate. Luckily, our dragons were able to finish the job at least up. And with that, we were of course now able to recruit Shakalot the Calamity into our army, increasing the size of our army and the power. But then, just when things were looking up, Grimgor came along and things kept on looking up as he asked for some money not to beat us up. And once again, I took that just so we could finish off our dragon army. Eventually, I got to about 13 dragons strong before I started to really run out of upkeep that I could afford to spend on this. But as I was about to make my push on the Chaos Dwarfs and start that war, I decided to have a scout first and discovered that Grimgor was there with a wired-up army, but he wasn't at war with them. Yet. So I did the same as with Clan Moors, decreased their relations, and what do you know, a few turns on, and those two are at war. He's at war with Clan Moors as well, so that worked earlier too. So if we declare war on him now, he's not going to be able to put all of his focus on us, and thus we should be able to take him down with their help. And already Grimgor has sacked Black Fortress, which is going to hurt them because that is their main settlement that they start with. So the plan is coming together quite nicely. But I don't want to declare war on them just yet because they do have 2 stacks stood in my lands right behind my main army, so I'll wait for them to move off first, eh? Eventually they do, and they have a little tussle with Grimgor, and I then decide it's my time to strike. I'm going to start at Ruin's End so I can kind of curl my way round through their kingdom. I go to declare war, but I don't realize that they're allied with the Poxmakers of Nurgle, who are nearby to me. But I decide to say heck it, and I go for it anyway. Let's see what these dragons can do. I take Ruin's End, but then there's a bunch of Nurgle armies knocking around. We kind of dance around each other, no one attacking anyone, and then eventually Grimgor comes along and just scares them both off and clears the path for me to go and take Pigsbarter, which will complete the province with Ruin's End. And now I finally have a second province, although I'm not expecting to hold on to it very well because Nurgle's going to be constantly pressuring me from that direction, and I intend to go after the Chaos Dwarfs, which I need to do right now as there is one of their armies there in forced march. It's not the toughest army with goblins and orcs, but I'll take the auto-resolve here. Eventually, Grimgor ends up in a fight with those 2 Nurgle armies with the help of my garrison, so it's mostly him doing the work. I'm going to say yes because it's a close victory and we can get rid of those 2 Nurgle armies and just keep that direction a little bit safer for a while. Cheers, Grimgor's boys, you really are the best. Now, after coming home and replenishing for a while, I decide it's time to finally launch my assault on the main Chaos Dwarf lands. But at the same time, one of Drazoth's armies have come over to attack Pigsbarter, but it's fine, whatever, I don't really care if I lose it. I actually managed to do a ton of damage to their army, as it was a lot of orcs and goblins, but I wasn't able to fend them off. But it didn't really matter, they only sacked it in the end, and then seemed to bugger off. So then I finally made my push on Black Fortress. I had to take a couple of turns wearing them down, but eventually I got a Pyrrhic Victory auto-resolve, didn't lose anything. Nice. I then found myself at another dragon encounter where I could once again challenge the dragon, this time Imrath the Eternal. My dragon army still growing more impressive by the turn, especially now as Imrik had got his dragon Menaithnir, which has made him far more powerful. And in this one we're of course against the lizard men, who do have some slightly more dangerous threats to my dragons, like a feral carnosaur, or there's also all these salamander types who have got anti-large bonuses on their missiles, so there are some dangerous units to be careful of in this one. And eventually they even send a Dreadsaurian along who dwarfs a dragon. You realize how big a Dreadsaurian is when you see it next to a dragon who looks tiny. But all in all, we were able to get the victory, although we took a fair pounding, the lizard men putting up a good fight. They even managed to kill one of our precious dragons, but he will be replaced by Imrik himself, so can't complain. With the eastern part of the Chaos Dwarfs Kingdom taken, I now needed to push a little bit north to take the Sentinels, and then west for the rest of it. After taking the Sentinels though, I forgot that this happens in Imrik's campaigns, but he gets Confederation with Calador, which I am going to take because free stuff. So that's going to give me a little bit of income, but also I can now get trade agreements with all of Ulthuan, so there's a shit ton more money right there too. The Chaos Dwarfs are pushing back though. They've come into my lands where I have no armies to defend and have decided to attack the one settlement they're probably not going to take because it's got a dragon in the garrison. It was actually a bit tougher than I expected. Drazoth himself was on the field, but I pretty much broke their army in two. They had 4 different little armies coming at me from 2 different sides. So I just ignored one side and made half of their army fight my entire army, so we heavily outnumbered them and then did the same thing to the remaining side, which had come into the settlement and was about in the middle of the settlement fighting over the flag, as we all were. We had a nice little battle there. It was a tough fight, but we got the job done in the end, even killed Drazoth. So we took care of their army, keeping our starting province safe for now. But as I prepared to move west, there was another big Drazoth army, this one considerably tougher. It did seem to disappear, but as I left my settlement, I found an opportunity to intercept them, and decided to take it as it was just a close victory. That army was now out the way. 2 big Drazoth armies done for. And that freed me up to take the last settlement in this province, giving us 3 full provinces now. My mage finally got her dragon mount as well, and of course I've been putting all of Imrik's skill points into buffing up the dragons as much as possible. I'm now going to get Heart of the Flame, that gives armor, melee defense, physical resistance, so all my dragons just got a bit tougher. After replenishing for a bit, we carry on with our taking of the Chaos Dwarfs Kingdom. But as I look to take Crookback Mountain, I notice it's got a big 20-stack garrison as well as a little army there. So I decide to do the dragon encounter that happens to be nearby to get ourselves another new big spicy dragon. And my dragon army, now 16 dragons strong, shouldn't really struggle with this. It's against the Tomb Kings. I send Imrik and the big unique dragons after Gordonar, the big unique dragon we're trying to get. And after a few breath attacks, we send in the boys, and well, it doesn't take long to dismantle the Tomb Kings. So another legendary dragon in our midst, although I forget to put him in my army straight away, and I get attacked by 2 Drazoth armies. While we're still recovering, so we're a bit beaten up, we're going to have to pull out the Dragon Flying V tactic, which has absolutely no purpose other than looking fucking cool, which might make them jealous and make them make a mistake, which has happened here, as their lord has charged into all of my dragons in the V, so I have all of my dragons attack him. 16 versus 1. Needless to say, he didn't last very long. I started off with a bunch of breath attacks, of course, to soften things up nicely before we got into melee. There was a few units of blunderbusses around who are especially dangerous to our dragons. They are very powerful, so I needed to make sure I disrupted them, which I wasn't doing very well here. They also had some fireglaves and some goblin archers, so there was a lot of missiles. There was also some anti-large, the centaurs, and a lot of my dragons did get beaten up. I had to pull them back and put them in a little wounded crew over here. But with a lot of cycle charging, a lot of moving around, a lot of breath attacks, we were able to eventually get them. But with Total War being Total War, even though all my dragons survived, it decided that, hey, actually a bunch of them didn't survive, and so the size of my dragon army had taken a hit for now. But after a little rebuilding, we were now ready to take on Crookback Mountain and its 20 garrison. To do this, though, I took a little bit of a different approach, as there is a right that gives you +3 dragon breath attacks, on top of what you already have. So that's going to be at least 6 breath attacks per dragon, although I happen to have 7 for some reason. So that is what I did. As I rolled up on Crookback Mountain, I attacked with primarily breath attacks. A little bit of melee here and there to disrupt missiles and stuff, but mostly we were just having a dwarf cookout, which as you can imagine was incredibly effective, completely safe from danger for the most part, and potentially able to do massive damage with every breath attack, which thoroughly nullified the enemy's strength here, which was of course melee infantry. Now with Crookback Mountain under our belt, we were nearly 4 provinces strong in this region. My empire was growing nicely. I've got 6 grand of income. I've just recruited some star dragons from one of my other lords and brought them over to Imrik's army so that he can push on the final settlement of the Chaos Dwarves, which is the Tower of Gorgoth. So basically the last stand for the Chaos Dwarfs here. They've got a couple of big armies, but it's a lot of orcs, a lot of goblins, nothing terribly dangerous to us. Nevertheless, I'm going to play it smart here and not dive into this massive crowd of enemies here. I'm going to fly around the map and take out all the little enemy units that are just kind of by themselves or in small groups, overpowering them with dragon fire and many dragons on their heads, so I can dismantle their armies a little piece at a time rather than trying to take on the big chunks. All in all, it works a treat. We're able to take things out without receiving too much damage ourselves, and we basically slowly force them to feed their army to us in different directions to my different dragon parties. And with that, and chasing down their final little army nearby, that is the end of the Legion of Asgore. Now, as this region wasn't part of any of my provinces, I decided to give it to Karazakarak because they were big, powerful, and friendly with me, and they could provide me some protection from the north. I decided to finish this campaign by dealing with Nurgle and taking care of him, but my Pig Sparta settlement is under siege. It has had a rebellion. There's some ogres around who did end up taking the settlement, but I go over, beat up the armies around, and then reclaim the settlement. And all the while, I've been building a second dragon army with my other lord Hamara, so we can hopefully steam our way through Nurgle. Before I launch my assault, though, I've got one last dragon encounter I can do to get one more unique dragon. This time, it's fighting Norska for Lamaru, the Frozen Boy Dragon. Yada yada, you know how this one plays out. The Norskan stuff doesn't have a ton of leadership, so it doesn't last terribly long, but they do send 4 mammoths at us towards the end, but it's not quite a match for like 20 dragons. Although tell a lie, that was only 19 dragons, and Lamaru himself is actually my 20th dragon, giving me the full dragon stack. I used this unlimited power to charge into the Nurgle lands, although attrition is always a problem, but luckily we've got a right for that can make us immune to attrition, so we're definitely going to use that when attacking Nurgle. And I begin my assault of his various undefended settlements with easy, quick, decisive victories on those, but Nurgle does retaliate by trying to come and take my settlements, but luckily my second dragon army is there to stop them. All the while, Imrik is starting to push onto the islands now to try and get rid of these settlements, but I eventually decide to push back the other way just in case more Nurgle armies start causing problems, and those 2 Nurgle armies do eventually find a way round our defenses and start getting into our territory, so I have to chase them down and get rid of them, but luckily Imrik's able to keep progress rolling and taking settlements. Eventually, I'm able to get my 2 armies to meet up, which I've been trying to do for ages because I gave my other army all the Star Dragons, which are very expensive, with the intention to give them to Imrik because he can make them much cheaper with his upkeep reduction. So now I'm finally able to do that. Save us a bit of money. I begin my push in 2 different directions on Nurgle's kingdom, or should I say Kugath's kingdom. Kugath, who I do manage to get an ambush on with Hamara. Her army not as strong as Imrik's, obviously, but still pretty damn strong with 20 dragons. I decide to organize a synchronized breath attack on this one, launching all my breath attacks at roughly the same time, which does look pretty damn glorious and does a scheisse ton of damage. I set up another 1 or 2 of these, add in a little Kugath Bukaki, and we're done. Another Nurgle army down, and another dragon encounter on the way for another unique dragon. This time it's against the Wood Elves, which is perfect for me because I love killing elves, especially when it's by dragonfire from another elf faction. It was a great day, and another dragon in the bag. I then just clean up the eastern side of Kugath's kingdom here, and then I need to bring Imrik over to help Hamara because she's getting overrun by Nurgle armies. They seem to be able to spawn up armies pretty damn quick, and she can't get into the islands. So I divide my armies, attacking from 2 different directions. Needless to say, Imrik's army is very powerful with Imrik himself, all the unique dragons, a whole ton of star dragons. He's able to take a bunch of settlements and armies out by his damn self. It's then just a case of finishing off the rest of the islands. There's a couple of settlements up north I didn't notice, so I send Hamara to go and deal with them. And with that, the land is now clear of Nurgle. We've got a nice little dragon empire here, and it's been fun. I've actually really enjoyed this campaign. I thought it was going to be a bit of a struggle with only dragons. I thought they might be too expensive to pull off a full army of them, and high elf stuff generally quite expensive. But we got 2 full stacks of dragons. We got enough money for a 3rd one as well. We got 6 grand of income, 46 in the bank. I've got most of the victory conditions done. So, dragon-only armies work pretty damn well for Imrik, it seems. I hope you've enjoyed this. Thanks for watching. Thanks to all the patrons who support this channel. And hey, you want some more of this jazz? Check them out over here. I'll see you in the future.